All right, so I think we're live on YouTube, and Lewis, I think, is still working on getting
Let me
that
take
link
care
out.
of this. Yeah, I'll do that now.
But otherwise, we can start. So we can go with the introductions. This is the Aragon Devs 23 now. Again, it's always hard to see if anybody is actually new because of the profile pictures. I believe just John Light from Aragon 1 may be the only new person, but please speak up if you have not attended this call. Otherwise, John, could you please introduce yourselves or yourself? John, if you're speaking, you are currently muted. Okay. I will ping John afterwards, but I think we can skip John this time, and in case John comes back again, we can introduce him again. He may just be grabbing coffee or something like that because it's quite early his time. In that case, we can go straight to the updates. So we can start with Aragon 1. The last 2 weeks have been just pretty much working towards the 0.7.x roadmap. If you've seen it on the forum, we have a couple of items that are listed under each release, and we're hoping for these to be more or less bi-weekly releases before we kind of close out 0.7 and start working fully on 0.8. So 0.7.3 will be released later this week. We're targeting around Wednesday for that launch, and it will come with a new API for the Aragon apps. So this in particular will allow applications to cache their state better between different runs. The first load is not going to be better, but the second and N plus loads should be much faster. There's going to be more details on exactly what this migration means, but we'll be revving the Aragon /API package along with a few others to make this upgrade. So if you're still using the Aragon API version 1 right now, nothing should change. But if you want to, we'll be releasing betas quite soon for this version 2. And right now, the only place to really see the changes is on GitHub, but we'll have a migration document out later. I think the plan for this is going to be mostly targeting 0.8. So there will be more emphasis putting on migrating existing applications to 0.8, including the new UI style, as well as these new API changes that are happening in the background. But yeah, basically stay tuned for that, and hopefully, if you are using an organization often on Rinkeby or mainnet right now, you'll see load times be much faster for the existing applications. Outside of that, I think just more progress has been made on the court, and perhaps Jorge and Bingen can chime in on that.
Yeah, well, you can have a look at the GitHub repo. There are to keep track of the different issues and pull requests, but mostly there was a big pull request, the number 41. Jorge already reviewed. I addressed the changes, and now we're going to iterate over it a little bit. And then Jorge pushed another one, the number 40, for appeal collateral that I already reviewed. And then we are starting with some minor ones like what happens if there are missing batches. This is already done. The one for the final appeal round. I don't know if you guys are know exactly what that's about, but if you want more context, you can go to the GitHub repo and keep track there. But yeah, there has been good progress, and I think we're doing good right now. And that's it.
I think in terms of status, Bingen, do you want to give like a top highlights in the last 2 weeks or to 4 weeks?
Yeah, I would say that the top highlight is that things are working now in the sense that we have been able to test passing. So because before we were kind of moving forward, but kind of blindly because we had like it's a really big contract, the cool one, and we had that problem that it was not able to be deployed because of the size. And we were able to figure that out, and then we have everything, like all the big things like the checkpointing, the multi-sortition, and everything all put together and working and with the test passing. So now we can go for the minor issues, and so I would say that before it was really uphill, and now I don't know if it's downhill, but at least it's flat, let's say, and that's a really great improvement in our state right now. And feels like more comfortable and safer to be working this way now.
That's awesome to hear, Bingen.
Mm.
And I just wanted to bring Faku on stage as well to talk a little bit about what he's been doing with Aragon OS in the last 2 to 4 weeks as well.
Yeah, sure. So, well, the first thing I started working on was the kill switch. We've been exploring many alternatives in order to know what was the best option to tackle that issue. It was a big one. And after some back and forth, we decided to a really nice and, in my opinion, simple first implementation. You can take a look at it, guys. There's a PR about it. There's a long conversation going on there, but I think we're closely to have it like done. I would say like for this first implementation, there are some edge cases that we still need to discuss a little bit. And on the other hand, I was also doing some progress on the idea of supporting meta transactions for Aragon apps. So it would be just basically the idea of allowing a DAO to pay for their members' transactions. And we've been as well exploring different patterns on how to support meta transactions. There are many standards going around about some pros and cons of these different alternatives. But I think we found one that I haven't seen in the community yet. It was a pretty cool one. The idea is to like append the signer of the transaction on the call data at the end of the call data, and it's pretty cool because we just don't need to change a lot our Aragon apps in order to support new transactions. But of course, the gas concerns. I mean, in terms of which is the delta that a DAO needs to pay in order to support the transaction for the members. I think that's the thing under discussion right now. How much we can optimize that solution, and if there are other way of doing the same thing, or yeah, so there's 2 PRs on this topic already published on the Aragon OS that you can guys feel free to jump in and take a look at it. And yeah, that's it. I think for both features where at least the first implementations are proposed are there. We're still reviewing and have some discussions on both of them, but I'm really happy with the progress that we did so far.
And these 2 features will be probably landing in Aragon OS 5 when that happens. I think once we start merging these changes, we're going to mainly focus on the new version of Aragon OS as opposed to maintaining version 4. Our apps will still use version 4 for quite a while, but I think once we have kind of these larger architectural changes in Aragon OS, incremental changes, I guess it's not fundamental changes, we can then start thinking about applying these upgrades for newer applications.
Yeah, sure. Right. Sounds good.
So I wanted to thank John as well for taking notes. I think that's something I forgot to assign earlier in the call. And we can do that just now before we go into Alteryx updates. Let's see. I think, John, if you don't mind continuing to take notes, that would be highly appreciated. And And Otto, do you mind taking notes? Otto, if you want to, can you confirm?
Yeah, sorry, I was mute. Yes, I can definitely.
Okay. Did you do it last time?
Yeah, I did a bit, but we did like several people.
Okay. If you don't mind this time, then can you do it again, and then I'll remember not to pick you next time.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So with the logistics out, then I think we can proceed to Alteryx update.
Okay. So over the past 2 weeks, we're wrapping up work on the Profiles app, and that's basically ready for initial testing. At the end, I'll pass over to John so he can give some more details. For the initial home app, which doesn't include the full feature set, but at least has the ones that we're going to publish initially and test with. All of the front end work there is completed, and most of the contract and integration work is handled, and that should be completed, the initial version of that, before the next all devs call. We've finished an initial implementation of the forwarder API spec as detailed on the forum, and we just need to test that with an application. So actually using it with one of the apps in our system, and then submit it against the Aragon JIPO. This does not implement the new caching patterns, so modifications may be needed to that if we want to keep both of the full repository using the new caching patterns that you're going to be pushing soon. Our offsite is next week, so we're prepping some for that, and our plan is to have an initial draft of our next AGP proposal finished after our offsite. So everybody can expect that before the next all devs call as well. Then our plan for the next 2 weeks is to wrap up loose ends with everything detailed so far, which is the home forwarder API and profiles. But our primary focus will be customizing the client so that the default display of the home application can be set to a user-defined application, which the full functionality of is something that we would have to wait for the next Aragon OS release for, just because we'd need somewhere to set that default application for the client to display in home, and it makes the most sense to us in the kernel. We're also going to be working on the expanded forwarder options, which should mostly leverage changes in JS, but we'll also potentially need changes. Well, we'll definitely need changes to Aragon OS. So again, that's something that we won't be able to release until the next major Aragon OS release, but we should at least get the work done over the next 1 or 2 cycles. And then we're also going to be working on setting up basic IPFS pinning. From this point, John, if you'd like to speak on either the profile work that's been done or the IPFS pinning going forward.
Yeah, cool. The profile stuff, you covered it pretty much. We're very close to being feature complete. Like they look like profiles, the designs are there. And so we're going to start hopefully this week building that repository into Aragon repository. So yeah, and one other thing, maybe we don't have to talk about this now, but is as we start to make those changes in the Aragon repository, when should we be submitting PRs, and how often does like the Aragon maintainers want to maybe poke around and look at that code? So that's something, I don't know, we can talk about later. In terms of IPFS pinning, I think the natural first step is to just get the clusters up and running. Hector, I think he's like the captain of IPFS cluster. He merged the PR, which allows IPFS clusters to be run with leader and follower nodes. So a leader node can pin and unpin files, where follower nodes can only replicate data. So that provides a little bit of safety for teams that want to use a cluster. So that's where we're going to start. And then we can see how that goes, what problems we run into, what things we need from there.
Okay, sounds good. And Kevin, are you in the call? 1 second. Yeah, Kevin, do you want to give any more details on the forwarder API or no? I guess there's a topic for that, so we can put that off. Yeah, that's it for our updates.
All right. Thanks, guys. I think the next one would be the mesh team between Daniel and Gabby.
Yeah, sure. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. In our previous 2 weeks, we released a new Aragon CLI and Aragen. This was mostly for stability. We update the dependencies, create an end-to-end test for Aragon Run, and also added log files using npm shrimp run. That is the reason is for try to prevent the CLI to break unexpectable in different environments. We also create a DAO on Rinkeby with the project's apps installed to start granting bounties to new contributors. You can check down here. That was really great, and the feedback was amazing from people that is really excited to use this kind of new tools. We also help a bit with hack documentation, and our current priorities are iterate on the IPFS command for better stability, having a better feedback when you fetch in a file, and better error messages. We also are going to create a DAO to experiment with the HEP 28 and the Aragon Package Manager governance. Yeah. For those that you don't remember, this is the HEP. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. I just wanted to highlight too that I believe there's already been 2 bounties that have been paid out with the organization you've created.
Yeah, it was 3 bounties. 2 bounties, but we only paid the first one. The next one is we need to make the payment. but yeah, it was really cool. And thank the outer team. It's really amazing, the app.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. So, I mean, for more information on this this organization, it's on Rinkeby right now, but Gabby and Daniel have installed the Planning Suites projects app on it, and they're kind of just bridging mainnet payments by asking people what their address actually is and then sending that to them manually right now. But it's really, really cool to see this happening. All right. I think then we can move on to Aragon Block. I heard that Oliver is not going to be here today, so I'm not sure if you guys have coordinated on who to talk to.
Yeah, I can jump in, and then I'll let Deem sort of give updates on apiary, since that's what he's been working on. But essentially for Pando, we refactored our background scripts to fetch the IPLD data to comply with their new spec. We finished up tests for that as well. We also implemented the front end for Markdown editing inside the browser. And I'd just like to give a shout out to Otto for coordinating some of that work with myself. And there's sort of a lingering question, since we're using similar dependencies to actually do the Markdown editing. And so there was talk about opening an issue on the Aragon UI, but maybe I can table that discussion for a later point. But then what else? Back for the, I mentioned the test. Okay, so then Deem, if you want to jump in with the apiary stuff.
Yeah, so the apiary, or which is now called Aragon Fundraising app, is the front end is pretty much done. It needs some minor refactoring just to make the code pretty, and also perhaps a final review on the design from Patty, but it's not super necessary right now. So yeah, the front end is responsive, and we have filtering of orders and the child history. So that's all good. Also, Olivier said that the market maker contract is now ready. There's only one thing left, which has something to do with the fees on the sell orders. And then there's this up-and-coming audit, which has been scheduled from June 10th to July 1st. And right now we are working on getting the kit, and also looking into how we can getting the onboarding screens for the kit also. And after that, we will begin working on the Web3 integration, like making the front end work with the smart contracts. And that's it for us.
Great. Thanks, Corey and Diem. Yeah, talking with Oliver, it sounds like this is coming together quite quickly, I think. So it's very exciting to hear that the auditing is progressing. We have a set date for it, and the front end looks like it's coming together. Okay. I think then we've done the updates, and we can head to talking about the proposed topics. The first one here is John Light. I think.
Sorry, Brett. Just I probably need to update a bit about what's going on at AA. I don't know if it's in the template.
That would be, yep. I think we should add that to the template, but that's.
Isn't it? Yeah, I think it's in the template. Sorry for that. I probably should have said it earlier. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but very short update about from AA. So basically, we've been, as Dim just said, we've been planning the audit for Apiary for now, and are kind of in the process of securing some audit with for the payroll app. So the Apiary audit will take place next month from the 10th. And on. So have you seen I'm pretty sure everything that is that the market is pretty energetic and bullish in the past days and weeks, and so the treasury is now around 60 million, which is quite nice compared to the bottom which was around 22 million, and so Stefano is doing a lot of work around securing some of the treasury as it goes up, and so we're kind of monitoring the operations on that side. And on the Nest side, we've been approving level K for a second Nest grant, which is quite cool. They'll be working, I think, pretty closely with A1 and the guys developing the court, as the footer key implementation. It should be quite useful to sort of some of the court issues in the court system, and we've also been receiving two interesting Nest proposals, 162 and 161. And are still being reviewed, and we invite you to have a look. And if you have an advice or feedback, we're welcome to take some on that. And finally, I'd probably put up a post on the forum about the address registry or contact registry we've been talking about on the past. All dev, basically to have this directory where we have all the contacts and roles of the members of the Aragon network, so it's easy to reach out to everyone. So I put that up on the forum pretty soon. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Sorry for the.
No, thanks for the update, Lewis. I mean, obviously, really great to hear the treasury.
Yeah, always.
Okay, then I think John, are you still here? John Light?
Yep.
Wonderful. you have the floor for the DevTools Com channel.
Great. So I know that this topic was brought up on the last call. Sorry, I was not able to make it. I took a look at the notes and saw that the conclusion from the discussion on this topic last time was that use Twitter and Rocket Chat for DevTool release announcements. And then people who'd like to follow up on the updates can use the watch releases functionality on GitHub. I think that seems reasonable. I want to provide a bit more info and ask for some feedback on what specifically I wanted to bring up with this topic, since it was actually my topic that I put on the agenda before. So this topic has come up a few times with different maintainers of different DevTool related projects, including the CLI and Aragon UI. And historically, what we've done for these releases, if we've done any sort of like externally facing communications at all, is to just if the maintainer of the project has a Twitter account, they might tweet about it, either like an individual tweet or like a thread, and then we'll just retweet that from the Aragon project Twitter account. And what this does is it just gets some more visibility onto the release, since the Aragon project account has a bunch of followers, and that's where people look, at least on Twitter, for Aragon related news. And then another thing that has been done historically is to use Rocket Chat. So we do, again, the maintainer might do an @all channel message in the appropriate channel to announce the release. So I think this has been, first I wanted to kind of get the thoughts from maintainers on the call about, how release communications have been working for them so far, if they feel like they're, adequate for what they want to do, or if they still need more visibility or want more visibility, and, to try to get more eyes on the code or the designs, whatever it is. And if we do want more attention, then we can turn to the topic of maybe new channels that we can use to promote these releases. So do any maintainers have thoughts that weren't, I guess, discussed last time? I'm thinking, I mentioned the Aragon CLI. I would also mention Aragon UI. And there are really a bunch of little dev tools that are being worked on. Aragon PM, I think, would also fall into this. But any of these tools that, are really core components of Aragon that we might want to either have other Ethereum projects adopt, or we just want more like open source contributors, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can talk on Aragon API, and I think for the most part, that's probably not worth too much external communication, because most of the people who are interested in it are likely going to be building an Aragon app already. I think the practice with like someone tweeting it and then the Aragon project retweeting it sounds really good, as well as just updating documentation and letting everyone know on the all devs as well that stuff is happening.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a current kind of established workflow for making sure that releases are documented before, say, a PR is merged or the release is pushed?
So for the most part, this is on each repo's maintainers, I'd say right now. There are pretty different practices actually between some of these repos. The main ones that come to mind are Aragon UI, Aragon JS, and Aragon CLI. I think all three of these repos have pretty different strategies. I know Pierre makes like really beautiful release notes when he can, and he'll follow the tweet strategy as well. Whereas for Aragon API, it's like less visual, and there's usually not so many interesting things happening to it that I just leave text notes. Daniel and I, or we'll leave text notes, and then the CLI I think generally follows that too. They don't have too like much marketing, I'd say, in those releases. Although perhaps it's a good question whether or not we can make things like animated GIFs or kind of put a little flair into Aragon CLI, because I think that's probably a tool that most people will touch. It's like one of their first interactions with the Aragon ecosystem, and it could be made, I guess, like more shiny in that way. Thoughts, Daniel and Gabby?
Yeah, I think we should definitely be more like Pierre. Maybe doing a tweet in the same manner and with our accounts, and then ask the Aragon Twitter to reply it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. If you just tag at Aragon Project in the like first tweet, I'll see it and tweet it as soon as I see it, essentially. So
Okay,
you don't even have to message me out of band. You can just tag the Aragon Project Twitter account and it will get retweeted.
Great.
But yeah, that sounds like a great first step, and I agree with Brett that Aragon CLI is of the tools that I mentioned. Pierre started like doing his own tweets for Aragon UI. So of the tools I mentioned, I think probably Aragon CLI is, I would say, highest priority for like communications, just because it's one of the first touch points.
Makes sense.
Okay, cool. And then Brett, agree with what else you said about the releases.
Yeah, I mean,
so
last time we were touching upon Aragon CLI and saying perhaps we could have like smaller stability releases and then larger feature releases. These larger feature releases coming every month or every other month, kind of similar to how the Aragon client works. But I think we can make perhaps a bit more noise when that functionality does land. I think the last couple of releases, there hasn't been huge things being added to the Aragon CLI. It's been mostly updating and fixing a few stability problems. But it's really nice if like a nice new feature, a command, like I remember Aragon IPFS propagate, like that was really, really cool to see. And I think it could have deserved like its own little tweet storm or at least a little story behind it, just to make some more noise.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. This is it could be similar to the kind of way that we do regular Aragon product releases, where for major releases we do like a blog post and there's quite a bit more noise around it, and then for the minor releases we just do a tweet thread. Could have a similar kind of hierarchy, if you will, of how we promote the dev tool releases with minor releases. We could just push a release on GitHub, and then for the major releases, we can like do a Twitter thread or something.
But, yeah, I think that sounds really reasonable. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I think a lot of this is targeted towards the CLI right now, but in case you need help as well, Daniel and Gabby, I think John and other people would be up for it if you're curious as to how to frame something, or if you're out of luck what to write.
Yeah, like a few days before the release is planned, or just when the day the release is planned, we can coordinate on a DM or something if there's content that needs to be written or screenshots or anything. We can brainstorm, coordinate, get something written up, and push it out. And same goes for any other maintainers of tools in the Aragon ecosystem. If you want more eyes on your releases, feel free to ping me, and we can coordinate something.
Just an idea to add here. If we are going to make a bit more noise about the releases to the CLI, maybe this is a good opportunity to invite new contributors. We also do need help. So Gabby has been kind of creating a process for bounties, and as we discussed earlier, we just paid the first bounty, which is cool, but perhaps we can invite the rest of you to, if there is a feature of the CLI or a bug that you would like to be fixed, we can put a bounty. So please comment in GitHub that we should put a bounty on it. And if there are other projects that are exploring bounties, and that would be cool to collaborate on. The main issue is how do we estimate how much a bounty should be funded and stuff like that. So maybe we can have this for more projects like Aragon UI, and have some sort of community standard way of doing bounties. And this will be really nice if we start doing some advertisement of the CLI.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Arthur, if you had kind of some development around that in the DAC before, because I know you were managing a lot of the Gitcoin bounties. They feel like they might have just fizzled out now, but it might be a good opportunity to get back into that.
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge with doing anything directly with the Gitcoin bounties is just the fact that you have to have a single account handling all of that. So ideally, if we could, it's long term, but being able to manage that through TPS applications would be a lot smoother, just because we would have the ability to have multiple accounts managing it. I don't know if we would want to do, I know that like doing something like a multi-sig wallet, maybe not for the purpose of security, but just so that multiple addresses can manage those bounties, that might be an approach. But obviously it's pretty clunky to interact with the Gitcoin system through multi-sig. So there's barriers there too. I guess the question is just like, what's the best strategy in terms of being able to have, more than one people overseeing and approving and things like that? Or do we want to just have one person, in which case, if there was one person, that's probably going to be a decent amount of their time, depending on how large the bounty system gets.
Yeah, I haven't been following with Gitcoin, and if they've changed that model, I really hope they have, because I know that was a giant pain. But if they haven't, then it almost sounds like we should just table it again, because it's too much of a bottleneck and too much of a hurdle to have someone like to ping someone all the time, being like, yeah, this bounty here has to be closed or like done something. It's really quite annoying.
We also decide not to use Gitcoin or try it because they start charging 10% of a fee, administrative. So I think it's better to go with the planning fee.
Yeah, that sounds good. I don't know. Maybe we could scale the current Rinkeby deployment up to more than just what the Aragon Mesh team uses. Like we could add Aragon UI quite easily. But I'm curious as well how these contributors came into the platform for the, I'm not really sure what to call it actually, the bounty organization.
Do you mean how they heard about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mostly ask them if they want to contribute. But yeah, this could be improved for sure.
Interesting. Okay.
And I also create a label in the issues that is founded. So that could also help.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if we could do other things tangentially to improve the visibility of these bounties, but that's something we can think more about in this, and we can even make like a microsite or add more links to like low barrier contributions that are funded, that type of thing.
I think when we have a new release, we can simply end the tweet store with a reminder saying that we have this number of bounties and then a link to a standardized label so people can just look through them. And maybe that's a good first step.
Yep, that sounds good. Yeah, I don't know how to make that label cross repo, but I think at the very least it would work for the CLI.
At some point, we're talking about having like all the, with the new design system, having all the components and their status, like which ones are coming next and these kind of things. And now I'm wondering if it could be a good idea to have, rather than having this only for Aragon UI, having it for like all the projects and see, what is coming for this project, and also the important issues and also the current bounties, like somewhere where we could have like a big overview of all the projects and the different tasks coming.
Well, can't we see an overview in the planning suite? I think we can. So maybe we can just scale the Rinkeby DAO.
Yeah, maybe that could. I was more thinking of like a page on Aragon.org directly. But yeah, maybe that could work too.
Yeah, I think it sounds like the lowest barrier right now is just to scale up the Rinkeby org, and then if that starts having issues, either because there's too many or whatnot, we can start thinking about making like an actual page on the website. Okay, so in the interest of time, because there are a couple of other items for this week, I think we can move on from this topic. I think we also digressed a little bit from the original discussion, but this was a good one to have. Always a good kind of good topic to have for bounties and seeing how to make things more sustainable. The next one I wanted to quickly bring up, because I think it was John that brought it up, how to collaborate on the Aragon client. And just, I don't know, I don't think too much needs to be said. I think in general, just making even a large pull request may make sense, but it just, the difficulty then is keeping it updated with the master branch of Aragon/Aragon. So yeah, I'm not super sure like what the right answer for this is, but of course, the smaller the pull request, the better, the easier it is to review, the faster it probably get inside the repo itself. But for something like the profiles, I'm not sure if there's a logical split that you can make, John, to.
Yeah, I'm thinking another way that we could make smaller PRs and not mess anything up really is to like potentially merge code, but in like a production environment, not allow access to any of the profile stuff, or like just not show it. So that way it can be in there, keeping up with the updates, but no one's actually able to use it. So I think that might be one easy solution to keep things moving. If that sounds okay, we can start this week and we can just improve as we go.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I think most of the code too is fairly well scoped behind just one application.
Yeah, and Yalda could probably chime in on this, but I think we're not sure if it's going to have like its own application, or if you just click on like some identity badge, it will just take you to a profile. But it seems like you should be able to click to your own profile too. So yeah, I think that's a question Yalda will have a better answer for.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it's I know I've seen the new designs for the client, and there's like the top navigation bar, and your avatar is there. So that's the ideal way of how you would access your like edit profile page. And then yeah, the other aspect is clicking on the identity badge, which is where the second layer of work would have to be to have that additional identity source or identity provider. So I don't think it really needs to be a separate app as far as like something in the left navigation goes, but more conforming to the newer designs. I'm actually curious when is that in the current release calendar as far as that having the top navigation bar?
Yeah, the whole redesign, let's say, with the design system and the top navigation bar is something we're targeting 0.8. And that too will be something for applications, existing applications to migrate into.
Great. That seems like maybe that's where we should target for profiles being live as well, because it seems like we would be, like, since we're going to be wrapping up in the next couple weeks.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really reasonable. It also still sounds like there's a little bit of feature ambiguity. So again, I'd recommend thinking with Lewis and Patty about exactly how the feature may look. And then, yeah, I mean, if everything's fairly well scoped, it makes sense to put it behind a feature flag and just not enable it. Of course, it's much harder if there's like a bunch of other routing and whatnot that has to happen. But I think for this particular situation, it sounds like it should be fairly easy to say, yeah, we don't want to show this at all yet.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, so looking forward to the first couple of pull requests. And then we can keep updating it from there.
Awesome. Same.
All right. Then we have potential caching solutions. This one, I'm not super sure if we should talk about this time because Oliver is in here from Aragon Block. Corey and team, are you kind of up to speed with Oliver's experimentations on the graph?
No, I think we should wait, actually.
Okay. So then, Lewis, can we move this towards the next agenda? The potential caching
definitely.
Great. Then we have the forwarding API, and probably Arthur, are you the best one to talk about this?
Yeah, me and Kevin. So yeah, we're testing this week. it should be ready for. When's your next release for Aragon JS or the API?
The API, the non-beta version will likely take a little bit of time to get out. We're going to be releasing the beta version as soon as tomorrow.
Okay, so yeah, I think that we should be able to integrate that before the main release. But if you want it to go into a beta release, we could submit the pull request today. I mean, it should be functional. It's just whether you'd have time to review it and get it in before the beta, or if you want to try and coordinate around the main release, that's okay as well. The only thing that we haven't tested is like setting it up in an actual application. So what we were going to do is we have most of it set up for leveraging it between our allocations application and dot voting, just because it's easier to set it up in one of our apps. The basic pattern we're using right now is there's a new forwarded action endpoint in the API and an update forwarded action endpoint in the API, and then individual applications can use get forwarded actions and then subscribe to the observable. So it adheres pretty much to spec. There was just some small changes, like we're storing like a state, which wasn't in the initial spec. I don't think it was just, things were deregistered, but we are persisting executed actions so that that information is still accessible. Whether that's something that is you want to keep in, you can check that in the review. We're ready to make changes if there's stuff that you feel doesn't work or doesn't adhere to the spec correctly. And then the only other thing is that I know that there's the changes in terms of how state's being managed with the event caching. And we were unsure whether you wanted this to adhere to that new pattern, in which case we would need to implement that pattern for the forwarder API.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds like seeing the pull request sooner would help with this as well, just so the ideas are a little bit more concrete. I do also think that the state caching mechanism will be an interesting one to discuss as to whether or not we want to cache these forwarded actions. Sounds like we probably do, and then we can try and update them on the next load or things like that. But I think, yeah, it would definitely be helpful to kind of see exactly what's going on. As for the betas, I think we can just keep releasing beta versions until the API has mostly been stable. And really, my idea right now is to keep going on towards betas until we're very close to the 0.8 release, and we've played around with some of these new APIs and know for sure that we don't need another breaking change in the future, or at least like for this iteration round for the API.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess next steps, we'll submit a PR against the repo in probably the next day. So by this time tomorrow, there should be one there. Is there anything else that we need to cover in terms of the forwarder API, or any questions you had?
Yeah, the big one is probably the design patterns, which is something that probably Patty on our side needs to take another look at. I think she's been wanting to take a look at this, but hasn't really had time. So this is a good chance now that the capability has come to start thinking about what it would look like, and if we can establish a good visual pattern across all of the applications. Have you thought about this, Yelda? Have you designed already some of the interactions around this these pending actions?
That's actually something I was just working on today, so I haven't fully wrapped it up. I could start to share some of it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be something that's consistent across all apps, except for how we handle the status and what kind of icons or colors we want to use. But for example, like one use case is like an allocation. And right now in our allocations app right now, we already have a table on the bottom of different allocation proposals. So essentially what's missing is one that's like pending a vote. So just coming up with like that terminology, and then like the different icons that we want to use for what it means when an object is pending a vote. But for example, for like issue curation and funding like 10 bounties from the projects app, those are use cases that are also a little bit different because we don't really have anywhere in the projects app right now that kind of displays these proposals. So that's the other design that I'm working on right now, is kind of like the best place in the app to show these different actions. So some of my thoughts around that relate to, you know, if an application has a lot of different objects that that might be going to a vote, like having like a dashboard for that application. So like the projects app may be an example where you want to see a dashboard of all of your projects related proposals, because then you can also provide a bit more context than you would get from the voting app. Like for example, whenever you're funding 10 bounties, you might want to see what's the total value of all those bounties, how many issues were in it, like who created that, or when was it approved. So so those are my current thoughts, but that's my plan is to have some initial designs done by tomorrow at the latest, so I can start sharing those as well.
Sounds good. Yeah, I definitely think like per app, inside each app will be very app specific like how to render them, because of course each app kind of has different patterns of showing where things are and what even an action means to that application. Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking as well about the whole notification system, the activity panel, because we have definitely thought a little bit about how to make that better. Right now, it's actually quite confusing. If you send an action, a forwarded action, if you look at it in the activity panel, it doesn't tell you very much, and you can be quite confused as to what's actually happening. They'll say like, I minted 5 tokens, but it actually went to a vote. So I think we have some in progress designs, but that as well has kind of been paused because of the 0.8 redesign. But this is a really good opportunity to probably get back into thinking about some of that as a holistic story.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't thought much about that activity panel, but yeah, I guess that seems like a good use case for coming up with this, I guess, design system or design patterns for how we handle the statuses and the different like icons and colors we want to use. I know that already there are a lot of different icons and colors going on there for the activity panel because the apps have all these different colors. So that might be one thing we want to think about more as we're introducing more colors. Because it can get really like hard for those indicators to be useful for you if there are a lot of different colors going on.
One of the things that we've also been exploring is like deep links within Aragon apps. We don't have much progress on this, but we think it would be really great UX-wise if you can click on like once the forwarded API is implemented, you can click on a pending action forwarded the location in the other app where that action is pending. I'm sorry, I don't know if this is like in the scope of discussion, but I thought it might kind of be worth noting.
Yeah, that is definitely something we've wanted for more than a year now. And it's definitely something that should come at some point. I'm not sure if I'll make it in the next release unless you guys have some spare time and want to pitch in for that. The main problem is just how to figure out app routing and how to send these parameters down between applications. Aragon JS has or Aragon API has this context API that hasn't been used ever, but it was meant to do this type of thing. And mostly it's the Aragon client not routing these parameters up in such a way I imagine we'd probably use URL parameters of some sort, and then the client should know that these parameters changed and to notify each application's front end that, hey, look, your actual context is over here, and you should navigate yourself to that location. But yeah, that's kind of something that haven't looked too far into actually, and really would like to. Yeah, it'd be great to like produce a link to a single vote so that you can just link to that on Twitter or elsewhere, as opposed to being like, go to this organization, go to this application, and go to vote number 15.
Does this also overlap with some of the profile work with the identity badges, like the routing that would be done there?
So yeah, I mean, when we're inside the context of the client itself, we've kind of cheated because we have direct access to URL parameters. And so for the profiles, if it's going to be included in the client, it's probably not an issue.
Right. It's external apps.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
I just did like some experimentation on that, and I added a params request function into the Aragon API React, so it works to pass with the use Aragon API hook to the apps, so the apps have access to a function that modifies the param request and also has access to get the current params. And it looks, should that be a solution, Brett?
Yeah, that sounds like a potential one. I'm not actually sure if we want to keep the whole context API. Again, because nobody has used it and it's kind of been dead code for a little bit. It came with good intentions, but we never ended up doing anything with it. So if there's other alternatives, I think it's quite safe to try them out, especially between the 2.0 release for the API. If things are looking good, we could just replace the context API or build other things on top of that right now. I'm not sure if Otto, if you built on top of that, or if you just directly use like a post message between the two contexts for the URL.
I use just post message with the params and calling the message title was params request that is received by the Aragon client, the Aragon /Aragon, and I also did the front end modification tool. I follow with the app center approach mostly, but we needed to use that params request to pass to the other apps.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like there's some interest around this, so we can definitely talk offline about how to make this happen. I'm really now thinking that the context API could just be modified to use more of a navigation style type of API. The problem with the context API was it's kind of top down. It doesn't let the app really talk back to the client to say, I want to change my context to this. So ideally, we'd expose some sort of like actual browser navigation or like app navigation type of API, as opposed to just receiving change events from the app. But it sounds like between you, Kevin, and perhaps Pierre, we can start talking about what this API might look like. Do you want to take a stab at making perhaps a forum post or a GitHub issue, kind of documenting some of the current approaches and where you'd like to see this happen?
Yeah, between Kevin, Otto, and the rest of the team, I'm sure that we can get something up for that.
Sounds great. Yeah, and yeah, just loop us in if you need help, or just make the forum post and we can discuss there, or the GitHub issue.
Yeah, sounds good. I think that our target for probably trying to get some sort of post up would be during next week, and then implementation would be probably in about 3 weeks. Just looking at our roadmap.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. keep us in the loop. All right. So we're definitely going a bit over time, and I think the IPFS follow-up, that was the next topic, sounds like something that would be better for next time anyway, because John said he'd likely get started next week now that the cluster work has been merged.
Yeah, and I think Olivier wanted to chime in with some stuff too.
Sorry, say that again, John.
I think Olivier wanted to chime in with some stuff too. So next chat sounds like a better option.
Sounds good. And then the mini lib, I think Corey, you might have brought this up.
Yeah, and it is pertaining to the markdown editing comment.
Gotcha. In terms of like moving that to
So basically the original plan was to just use the component that Otto wrote up and use the designs that the AutoTalk team produced. But for our use case, it wasn't really necessary. So I was just sort of wondering, like, what's the process for if we wanted to, let's just say, like, standardize the markdown editing component, like just mainly the text editing component and all of the helper buttons for, you know, bolding and for italicizing and kind of doing like basic markdown operations. And so I was just wondering, like, should I make an issue on Aragon UI and sort of like present a design? Should a design be come up with first and then that gets iterated on? Or like, is there sort of like a style guide or like some sort of like reference guide I could look at to determine whether or not it's appropriate even to add a component like this?
Yeah, I think it definitely sounds like we should have a discussion with Patty on the design system to see if there can be some sort of standardized text input or text editing component for Markdown. I'm not sure exactly what the differences are in the two implementations right now or the designs. I imagine, you know, like a lot of Markdown editors have their own little flair, or like they have their own styles that go with the application. So I don't think there would be like a fully standardized one, but we could probably have like a base component that gives you all of this functionality, and then you can apply any other styling that you want on top of it. Hopefully with enough degrees of freedom and ease that it's not a problem.
Beautiful. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to take the temperature, like in this meeting, about whether or not that would be like a welcome addition or not. So I can just open an issue.
Yeah. Pierre, do you want to chime in if you have any thoughts on like having a component like this in Aragon UI?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to have it.
Okay. Then yeah, it sounds like probably the best way to go is let's make an issue, and then let's make sure to chat with Patty. I guess it's between you and Otto that have been developing this Markdown editor.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, as our discussion said, I would sort of pick up any sort of work to kind of integrate it into the UI. I was just mainly referencing that Otto showed me sort of Code Mirror as like the standard sort of text editing library that we're going to use. So I used that basis to make new designs for what went in the Panda lib. But other than that, though, I can sort of just pick up any like all the rest of the work to get that merged and like expose those props to a higher order component that we could use.
And yeah, Gorka also worked on a component to render Markdown. So yeah, it could be useful to see if we should align the Markdown flavor that we want for the two.
Sounds good.
All right. Sweet. Then, yeah, I'll modify that heading to be more about the Markdown editor. That brings us to the end of the topics. I know we're also a little bit over time. Do we have any other closing discussions? Any burning questions or topics? All right. In that case, yeah, well, let's end the meeting. This was the 23rd meeting, actually. So we're coming quite close to actually a full year of having these meetings. See you all next time on the 24th edition of this. That will be June 10th at the same time. All right. Cheers.
Thank you.
See you.
Everybody,
Bye.
thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
You guys.